I hadn't even taken my coat off before my Aunt Melanie waved the paperwork in my face. "The will's been read," she said, tone clipped. Grandma left the house to the family, shared evenly, the family, meaning her, Uncle Grant, and my cousin Amelia. Not me. I blinked, still frozen in the doorway, the cold February wind whipping at my back. "What?" "She said you already got enough. College. That summer trip she paid for." "She paid for that because I was valedictorian," I said slowly, not even angry yet, just numb. "Well, it was her choice. Don't make this harder than it has to be." I looked around the room. My parents had died when I was 12. Grandma took me in without hesitation. She raised me through grief, through teenage rebellion, through my first heartbreak. I changed her IVs when her hands got too weak. Drove her to every appointment. Stayed up with her through pain. The others came around on holidays and posted cheerful selfies beside her bed. But when her voice got weak and her memory started to slip, they stopped calling. Now here they were, sipping tea, laughing in the kitchen, and apparently I was left with nothing. I didn't cry, not there. Not even when they started clearing out her things like she was a guest in her own house. But I did sit on her bed that night, in the dark. The smell of her lavender lotion still lingered on the pillows. I clutched the only thing they hadn't taken, the old leather Bible from her nightstand, the one she always read before bed, even when her eyes started to fail. I flipped it open. Her neat slanted cursive filled the inside flap. To my sweet Lily. If you're reading this, then they got to it first. But I didn't forget you. Look where the light lives. What the hell did that mean? I checked the flashlight drawer, the cupboard by the window. Nothing. Then I remembered. Grandma had this old stained glass lamp, the one she always kept by the rocking chair in the reading corner. She called it her sunlight on rainy days. She'd joke about it having secrets. I'd thought she meant books. I crept downstairs. The house was silent except for the fridge humming and someone snoring softly in the guest room. Probably Uncle Grant. The lamp glowed faintly. I lifted it off the table, and underneath, taped to the hollow bottom, was a thick yellowed envelope. My hands were shaking. I opened it. Inside was a copy of her will, dated 6 months before the one they'd read. And this one, it named me as the sole heir. The house, her savings, even her old engagement ring. I read it twice, then 3 more times. My heart thundered. She hadn't forgotten me. They had forged a new one. The next morning I sat quietly at the kitchen table while Aunt Melanie handed Amelia a set of keys. "We'll repaint, maybe knock down the reading nook. Make a walk-in wine bar," Amelia gushed. I smiled faintly, folding the real will into the inside pocket of my coat. They hadn't just tried to erase me. They were about to find out I don't disappear that easily. I didn't sleep, not a second. Lay on the edge of the mattress in Grandma's now ransacked guest room, the envelope clutched against my chest like a lifeline. The paper was brittle and yellowed with time, but it was notarized, witnessed, dated. 6 months earlier than the forged. One they flaunted, and most importantly, it was hers. I recognized her loops, her little imperfections. She signed her name with a slight downward curl in the Y of Lily. No one knew that but me. I watched the sun rise from the window seat she used to nap in, the light spilling gold over the wood floor. The same floor Amelia had called dated yesterday and planned to rip up. They were vultures, and they were still asleep. By 7 a.m. I was on the phone. "Good morning. I'd like to schedule a consultation about contesting a will." "Yes, I do have documentation. The original." I didn't care that my voice was trembling. By noon, I had scanned the will and emailed it to a lawyer Grandma used to mention, an older man named Mr. Carmichael, who had retired but apparently still took select cases when the name sounded familiar. And it did. "Margaret D. Evans?" he repeated. "You're her granddaughter?" I heard something change in his tone. "Yes," I said quietly. "I'll be at the house by 3 p.m. They weren't expecting him. When Mr. Carmichael arrived, Uncle Grant was in sweatpants, barefoot, sipping coffee like it was his living room. Aunt Melanie was already packing up the antique tea set for safekeeping. Amelia was taking selfies on the staircase. None of them recognized him until he introduced himself. Then the color drained from Aunt Melanie's face. He pulled out a copy of the real will, held it like a blade. "This was filed with my office, dated 6 months prior to the one you submitted to the court," Grant scoffed. "That's impossible." "It's not," I said softly from the corner of the room. "I found it, tucked inside the lamp she always told me had secrets, right where she said the truth would be." Melanie's voice snapped, sharp like it always was when she was cornered. "This is absurd. She changed her mind. She told me so. She even had a new attorney." "She didn't," Carmichael cut in. "I was her only legal counsel. No change of representation was ever filed." The room went silent. I watched their faces shift, from disbelief to realization, to something close to fear, because if what I held was real, then everything they'd already claimed, every item packed into trunks, every shared asset, was fraud. And legally, that was theft. "Let's not do anything rash," Uncle Grant said, stepping forward like we were family again. "Maybe we can settle this quietly. You get a room, maybe a little money, and we keep the peace." "Peace?" I said, my voice quiet. "You stood at the top of the stairs yesterday and told me to get out of my house." Melanie's jaw clenched. She was old, confused. Probably wrote that will before she got sick. She wasn't sick. She had arthritis, not dementia. I snapped. She remembered everything. I turned to Carmichael. "What's next?" He gave a slow, deliberate nod. "We petitioned to freeze the estate immediately." Melanie stepped back like he'd slapped her. Grant looked pale. Amelia sat down, hard, suddenly realizing those house keys might be useless. That night, I went back up to Grandma's room. No one bothered me now. The fake will was unraveling. The house wouldn't be sold, and the ones who tried to erase me had forgotten who taught me to fight quiet battles. Margaret D. Evans didn't raise a fool. She raised a storm they never saw coming. By morning, the tone in the house had shifted entirely. No more fake smiles. No more condescending comments about letting me stay a few extra days. Instead, closed doors, whispered phone calls, sudden silences whenever I entered a room. I knew that kind of quiet. It was the kind that came before people started fighting dirty. Aunt Melanie made her move first. I came down to the kitchen and found her on the phone, her voice all syrupy and fake as she spoke into the receiver. "Oh, I just don't think she understands the pressure Grandma was under those last few months. You know how young people get. Emotional, impulsive. We're just trying to protect the estate until it's sorted." She hung up the moment she saw me, her smile instantly evaporating. "You've caused quite a stir," she said coldly. "Calling lawyers, making threats." "I didn't forge a will," I replied, opening the fridge like I still lived there. "Because I did." She stepped forward, lowering her voice. "You're going to destroy this family." I gave a bitter laugh. "You did that when you pretended I didn't exist." By noon, the email started. One from Amelia's lawyer, accusing me of manipulating an elderly woman for personal financial gain. One from a cousin I hadn't spoken to in 5 years. "You really gonna sue your own blood?" Even Uncle Grant sent a voice memo. "Let's be reasonable, Lily. Family comes before money." Family. They all kept using that word like it meant something. But none of them had been there at 2 a.m. when Grandma cried because her knees hurt and she couldn't remember where she left her slippers. None of them sat with her through her favorite TV shows while she slowly forgot the plots. None of them held her hand during her last birthday and watched her try to blow out the candles with trembling breath. They came for the pictures, for the praise, for the funeral, and now they were coming for what wasn't theirs. Mr. Carmichael and I met in a small office downtown. It smelled like dust and old paper. He had printed copies of the medical evaluations. Clean. No cognitive issues. "I'm filing for an injunction to freeze any further transfer of assets," he told me. "You'll need to make a sworn statement." "I will," I said. He looked at me for a long moment. "They'll fight this, Lily. They'll make it ugly." I nodded. "Let them." Then I pulled something out of my bag. It was the spiral-bound notebook Grandma kept by her bed. "I found this under the mattress," I said. "It's got her writing in it. Pages and pages. She talks about them. About me. About the will." I flipped to a page. "Melanie keeps asking me to sign new documents. She says they're just updates. But something feels wrong. I only trust Lily." Carmichael's eyes lit up. "This is gold. She wrote it 2 weeks before she died." I stared at the words, my throat thickening. Even when they tried to erase me, she remembered me. She protected me. Now it was my turn. When I got back to the house, Amelia was dragging a box of Grandma's books out the front door. "Those are mine," I said. She rolled her eyes. "You don't even read this crap. You don't get to decide that." She dropped the box with a smug smile. "Let's see what the court says." I looked her in the eye. They will. And I hoped she enjoyed the smugness while it lasted. Because tomorrow, she'd be served. And that house she took photos in, she'd be walking out of it very, very soon. 3 days after the injunction was filed, they came for my character. Not through lawyers this time, through whispers. Through the kind of stories that rot slowly and spread like mildew. I walked into the local grocery store and felt it. The cashier, Mrs. Adley, didn't ask about Grandma like she always used to. 2 aisles over, I overheard someone muttering, "Entitled girl, always had her nose up." It didn't take much to trace the source. Aunt Melanie had been busy, telling anyone who'd listen that I manipulated a confused old woman into changing her will, that I'd been obsessed with inheritance since high school, that I'd isolated Grandma. I stared at my reflection in the fridge door of the dairy aisle. My eyes were rimmed red, my hair a mess. I looked tired, hunted. Then I heard her voice in my head, soft and steady. "When people lie about you, Let them. Truth doesn't need to scream to be real. That night, I went back into Grandma's writing nook. The reading lamp still hummed with a soft golden glow, the same lamp that hid the real will. I sat cross-legged on the floor, flipping through the spiral notebook she left behind. Page after page. Some of it was simple. Lists, thoughts, reminders. But some of it? Confessions. I'm scared they'll turn Lily against me. Or worse, shut her out completely. I saw Amelia looking at my drawer last night. It's not curiosity. It's calculation. I want Lily to know I see her. I see everything. I ran my fingers over the ink. Then I turned to the last page, written in shaky, uneven script, 2 days before she passed. They will try to make her feel alone. But she is not. She never was. When I brought the notebook to Mr. Carmichael the next day, his response was immediate. "We're not just dealing with fraud," he said, voice clipped. "We're dealing with coercion, possibly elder abuse. I'll need permission to use this." "You have it." He adjusted his glasses. "They're going to panic when they realize how deep this goes." I smiled without warmth. Good. Later, that afternoon, a knock rattled the front door. I opened it to find Aunt Melanie, dressed like she came from church. Beige trench coat, oversized sunglasses, the Bible tucked under her arm like a prop. "May I come in?" she asked, all polite ice. "No," she sighed, stepping closer. "We don't have to keep this going, Lily. This fight. It's not too late to do the right thing." "You're right," I said. "It's not too late. You can turn yourselves in." Her smile twitched. "You really think people are going to believe you over family?" "I think courts believe evidence," I replied, holding up a photocopy of Grandma's notebook entry, the one that mentioned the forgery. Her mouth parted slightly. "You're bluffing." I didn't answer. Instead, I stepped outside, shut the door behind me, and looked her dead in the eye. "You stole from a dying woman, and then you lied to her granddaughter. I'm not bluffing, Melanie. I'm building a case." She blinked rapidly, color draining from her face. "You don't understand what this could do to us. I understand exactly what it will do." And with that, I walked back into the house. They thought I would be silent. They thought I would be ashamed. But I had Grandma's words, her truth. And now, I had the law. Let them whisper. Let them panic. Because justice wasn't just coming. It had a name. Mine. The hearing date was set for April 12th. That gave them 3 weeks to panic. And they used every minute. Emails, phone calls, character assassination campaigns. I even got a letter, written in cursive like it was from some dusty Victorian novel, begging me to consider how Grandma would feel seeing her family torn apart, as if they hadn't already shattered it. Mr. Carmichael prepped me for everything. "Judge may ask why you waited to come forward." "I didn't wait," I said. "I had to find the truth first." He nodded. "Good. Just speak like that. Clear. Honest. Let the evidence speak louder than their noise." And we had evidence. The notarized original will, the handwritten notebook entries, photos of the will, hidden in the lamp base, Grandma's medical records, confirming full mental clarity. A recorded voicemail from Grandma, 2 months before her death, saying, "You'll be okay, Lily. They'll try to come for it all, but remember, I wrote it all down. Just follow the light." That voicemail alone made my chest ache. but it also made me unstoppable. They walked into court like it was a fashion show. Aunt Melanie in pearls and smugness, Uncle Grant in a cheap suit and forced charm, Amelia in high heels, flipping her hair, like she was on trial for being too pretty. I sat beside Mr. Carmichael in a plain black dress, holding a folder full of facts. I didn't look at them once. The judge, a woman in her 60s with cold eyes and no tolerance for theatrics, read through both wills silently for several minutes. Then she looked up. I see we have 2 wills here. One dated July, the other January, both with separate witnesses, one with no formal legal representation, the other filed through Mr. Carmichael, a licensed and still practicing attorney. Is that correct? Yes, Your Honor, I said, steady. Aunt Melanie's attorney interjected. We believe the January will is invalid. It was made under undue influence. Do you have proof of that? The judge asked. There was a pause. Just testimony, he admitted. And Ms. Evans? I passed the folder to the bailiff. Inside was the notebook, the medical evaluations, the voicemail recording on USB, every page, every sentence, every truth she left behind. They tried to object. Amelia whispered something to her mother. Grant shook, his head, muttering, "This is ridiculous." But when the judge played the voicemail aloud in court, everything stopped. You'll be okay, Lily. They'll try to come for it all. But remember, I wrote it all down. Just follow the light. Silence fell. Even the bailiff looked over at me with something close to sympathy. The judge leaned back in her seat. Well, that's a very clear statement of intent. After the recess, Melanie tried to claim the voicemail was fabricated. Amelia said I manipulated Grandma with my constant presence. But their witnesses, friends of convenience, not truth, fell apart under cross-examination. They didn't expect that I had a copy of the old security logs from Grandma's care facility showing I visited daily. They didn't expect her nurse to testify on my behalf, saying, "She told me Lily was the only one who never asked about money." They didn't expect any of it, because they underestimated me, like they always had. When the judge announced that, the original will would be reinstated, and all transfers, sales, or claims made under the fake one were to be reversed. Amelia burst into tears. Grant muttered something under his breath and stormed out. Melanie didn't move. Just sat there, stiff, silent. I didn't feel triumphant. Not yet. Just quiet, exhausted, relieved. But it wasn't over, because justice is never the end. Not when people like them still have claws and secrets. The courtroom victory wasn't the end. It was just a gavel on paper, because when I came home that afternoon, their cars were still in the driveway. Aunt Melanie's Lexus, Amelia's little white BMW with the fake plates, Uncle Grant's ancient pickup, leaking oil onto Grandma's. Brick. They hadn't left, and worse, they were still inside. I pushed open the door to find Amelia sitting at the kitchen table, painting her nails. She didn't even flinch. "Oh, you're back." My eyes swept the room. My grandmother's table, where she used to shell peas, fold napkins, say grace, was now covered in makeup, receipts, and a wine glass with Amelia's lipstick smeared across the rim. "You're trespassing," I said flatly. She didn't blink. "We're still sorting our things. Mom says we have tenant rights, 30 days legally." I felt something cold twist in my gut, They were squatting. In my house. After losing in court. Upstairs, Aunt Melanie had locked herself in Grandma's room. I could hear her rummaging through the drawers, probably trying to find something, anything, to use against me. Uncle Grant was in the garage, already arguing with someone on the phone. I stood at the base of the stairs, fists clenched. They were pretending the ruling hadn't happened, pretending this was still their space, like the truth hadn't touched them. I called Mr. Carmichael. Can they do this? There was a pause. Technically, yes. For now. 30-day grace period for vacating unless it's proven they were staying without permission. I rubbed my temple. What do I do in the meantime? His voice softened. You document everything. Every drawer opened. Every item taken. Every word said. Okay. And Lily, he added, be careful. People who lose power sometimes get desperate. That night I slept on the pull-out couch. They had taken Grandma's room. They had boxed up my old one. I had nowhere else to go. The house creaked and groaned around me, like it remembered too. I stared at the ceiling, biting the inside of my cheek to stay calm. I could fight in court. I could win on paper. But this was war inside the walls. The coat. Next morning, I noticed it. The photo frame in the hallway, gone. The one of Grandma and me at my graduation. In its place, a new one. Amelia and Grandma, posed and smiling, from a family brunch they spent 10 minutes at. I went through the house. The knitting needles, missing. Her recipe book, ripped out pages, the old clock she used to wind every Sunday, now boxed with masking, tape labeled Melanie, fragile. They weren't just stealing things, they were rewriting her, erasing me from her memory, room by room. That's when I stopped reacting and started recording. I documented every lie they told. Every box labeled with something that was never theirs. Every moment they pretended to own what had never belonged to them. Because they wanted to drag this out? Fine. But I wasn't going to fight them with noise. I was going to bury them with truth. Quietly. Deliberately. Like she taught me. It was 3 a.m. when I heard it. A low thump. Then a metallic clatter. I sat up on the pull-out couch, heart racing, ears sharp in the darkness. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Until another sound. A drawer being yanked open. I got up, tiptoed down the hallway, and peeked into the study. Aunt Melanie stood at Grandma's locked filing cabinet with a bobby pin in her hand and a flashlight in her mouth. She didn't see me. Not until I flicked on the light. She froze, and I took the photo. 1. Clear image. Her caught red-handed in the act, just like I'd hoped. By morning, I had dozens more. Photos of Amelia taking Grandma's vintage earrings and slipping them into her own jewelry roll. Videos of Uncle Grant moving boxes of unclaimed valuables into his truck at 2 a.m. A voice memo recording of Melanie muttering, if she thinks she's getting everything, she's in for a surprise. They had no idea I had set up motion-triggered cameras in the hallway, in the garage, and one hidden behind the old bookshelf. They were giving me everything I needed to end this. Not just legally, but publicly. I sent it all to Mr. Carmichael. He called me within the hour. This isn't just inheritance fraud anymore, he said, tone grim. It's criminal theft, harassment, maybe even contempt of court. They're daring me to give up, I replied, staring out the window as Amelia watered Grandma's rose bushes like they were hers. He cleared his throat. "Are you ready to push this further?" "I was born in this house," I said softly. "And I watched them use Grandma's death as an excuse to feast on what she built." There was a long pause. "Then it's time to make it public." I didn't want to humiliate them, not at first. But then I thought of Grandma. How proud she'd been of me for getting into journalism school. How she always said, "The truth is a scalpel, not a hammer. Use it with care." So I wrote. A quiet blog post, a detailed account. Facts only, dates, evidence, screenshots. I didn't name names, but everyone in town could do the math. The story caught like wildfire. By the weekend, people were whispering again, but this time about them. Melanie lost her seat on the garden club, bored. Grant's construction permit got delayed. Someone had filed a formal ethics complaint. Amelia's PR job quietly suspended her for reputation review. And I sat quietly on Grandma's porch, watching it all unravel. That night, Amelia came storming into the living room. "You think this is over? You think you won because some bored people on Facebook are talking?" I stood calmly. "No, I won when I kept the truth, when I didn't stoop to your level. You're a selfish little, get out of my house, Amelia." Her mouth fell open. I repeated, stepping forward. "Get out." She looked like she might lunge, but behind me I heard another voice. Firm, familiar. It was Officer Delgado, the local deputy. "We're here to oversee the eviction," he said. 30 days are up." Behind him stood 2 more officers, one already moving toward the garage. Grant appeared in the hallway, wide-eyed. Melanie shouted something from upstairs, but it didn't matter, because the law had arrived, because justice had arrived, because I wasn't fighting alone anymore. As they scrambled to pack, yelling, throwing blame at each other, I walked to Grandma's old room. I opened her closet, ran my hand over her Sunday dresses, still smelling faintly of lavender, and I whispered, "I did it, Grandma. They're gone." But I knew she knew. She always knew. They left just before sunset. The Lexus backed out first, Melanie behind the wheel, sunglasses on, face tight with rage and humiliation. Amelia trailed behind, slamming the BMW's door so hard it shook the front window panes. Grant was the last to go. He didn't even look at me, just peeled out of the driveway with his truck bed full of things that never belonged to him. For a long while, I stood in the silence that followed. No voices upstairs, no footsteps in the kitchen, no perfume that wasn't mine lingering in the hallways, just stillness. For the first time in weeks, maybe months, I could breathe. The officers gave me a final nod and left, leaving the porch light on behind them. I sat there for a while, arms wrapped around my knees. It had taken months, lawyers, hearings, eviction notices, social shame, and relentless emotional warfare. But they were finally gone, not just from the house, from my life. The next morning, I started unpacking everything they tried to erase. The photo of Grandma and me at my graduation, back in its frame, the recipe book with her handwritten margins. I taped the torn pages back in place. The quilt she made me when I was 10, the one they'd stuffed in a trash bag in the attic. I washed it, hung it on the clothesline, and watched it flutter in the wind like a flag. People started calling. Some apologizing, some curious, some just wanting the gossip. I didn't answer any of them. I didn't need their validation. The truth had already spoken. Grandma had spoken, and the house she left behind, it remembered everything. 2 weeks later, I stood in the backyard with a small tin box and a garden spade. Inside the box was the last thing I'd found, tucked deep in a drawer, inside an envelope with my name on it. It was a letter, written in her handwriting. No legal jargon, no instructions. Just this: they will take and take until there's nothing left, Lily, unless you stop them, unless you stand tall. This house was built with hands that never took shortcuts. You know that. You watched me. You're the only one who did. So if you're reading this, you already won. Don't let them make you hard. Don't let them make you like them. The house is yours. But the peace? That's what I really wanted you to inherit. I read it twice. Then I folded it carefully and buried it beneath the rose bush she planted the year I moved in. The sun was low, the sky gold, and I finally understood. This wasn't about property. It wasn't even about revenge. It was about being seen, remembered, fought for. And in the end, Grandma had never stopped fighting for me. So I'd fought back. With truth. With silence, and when needed, with fire. As I locked the front door that night, I looked at my reflection in the glass. Not a girl grieving. Not a girl wronged. Just a woman standing in her house. Finally, alone. Finally, free.